Thank you everyone for coming. I'm very happy to be here and very happy to be joined by a distinguished set of guests over here. The panel today will be focused on what we call tomorrow's luxury. So this is all about the future of the luxury sector. And so just to set the stage briefly before we get into the discussions, I want to just give some context on the idea of the luxury industry. And I think it's worth mentioning that this is quite different from many other industries. Usually it's defined with a type of good or service, say the car industry or the banking industry. But for me, the luxury industry is more so a collection of many industries and a particular market position within that. So it's more at the upper echelon of a range of industries. And so, of course, it has a long history. It's proven to be a sector that's resilient through wars, recessions, now also pandemic. But there's also great changes coming and already happening, as we've been seeing. And for me, this is what we call tomorrow's luxury. So this is really driven by technological change, by demographics. What this means is that people are now looking at experiential luxury. They're looking at personalization. They're looking at seamless digital offerings and a whole load of other things that we'll get into. So this is a very complex and ever-changing world, so I'm glad that we have people like you to guide us through it. And I think we should just jump straight into the discussion. I'd love for you guys to first also just introduce yourself briefly. Diana, perhaps you can begin.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Diana Verde Nieto. I am the co-founder of Positive Luxury. We are an ESG and sustainability collaboration platform, and we help companies to understand where they are from an ESG perspective, help them to put transitional plans, not just setting target, actually how are they going to get there, and help all the different areas in the actual organization, so all the different teams to really, kind of get together and drive that change from a social, environmental, and governance standpoint.
That's super important, and I mean, of course, sustainability is one of the key drivers of this move towards tomorrow's luxury. Marco, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Marco Deseri, Chief Digital Officer at Artemest. I spent more than 20 years in technology and digital businesses and more than 15 in luxury e-commerce. Before Artemest, I spent 7 years at Hauk, before the IPO and learning about how to scale a luxury and e-commerce company. At Artemest, we are building a marketplace, bringing together all of the best artisans and makers in the home, furniture, and design space. We are applying a highly curated and editorial selection to bring luxury customers an end-to-end experience that is digital, but also very, very curated and high-end.
All right, very cool. I mean, we have the sustainability, we have the digital. They're all two super important elements of this. Philippe?
Yeah, my name is Philippe de Megreditchian, and I've been working in the private equity sector for the last 30 years. Actually, the irony of the history is that I've started working in this building 30 years ago in 155 Bishopsgate. For Framlington, and then after Johnny Verde, who was also in this building. So, I mean, it's a pretty interesting situation. We started together with Jeremy, we started OLMA 10 years ago, and we're specialized in investing in small and medium-sized businesses in the luxury field, both in the traditional and in the digital sphere. We have so far invested 79 million euro in 14 projects. And we've done already 3 exits, 2 writes-off, unfortunately, but 3 exits at an IRR of 30% plus. And we've really invested in a geography that is mainly in France, Italy, and Switzerland. And I think we'll detail later on some of our portfolio companies.
So I'm Jeremy. I'm not Ben Leslie, who's younger and more good-looking than I am. But that's life. And we set it up 10 years ago. And just in terms of, I think age, we're at a period of life which is very, very difficult geopolitically. And I think that experience is incredibly important. You guys are much younger and you've got what you call fluid intelligence, where you're much more innovative and creative. At my age, you get something called constructive intelligence. and you're much more scared of the downside on everything that's going on. And this is my 5th crash. The first one was in '87 at Cazenove. I just managed to keep my job. The second one was in '98. By pure luck, we managed to sell our business in Moscow to UBS. I still lost a lot of money because I left half of it on the table. The third one was in 2002, the net crisis. We'd set up a company called Under Trois Imo in France, and the home store, a $6 billion company, said, we'll buy it off you for 64 million. We said, yours. Then they came back and said, no, it would be 32 cash, 32 in a quoted European company. We said, yours. Then I said, we've got no money. They lent us 2 million. And then a month later, they went bust, the $6 billion company. And we had a bill with Ashurst Morris Crisps of 600 grand. And then in the 2007 and 8 crash, feeling very smug, had 4 hedge funds, 2 of them went under. So when we started off with Philippe, the key driver to us was preservation of capital. And we're very, very, very conservative. There's very little leverage, and we try to invest in market leaders, but I'll let Philippe talk more about it.
Thanks, it's a very timely introduction in many ways. And I mean, can we apply the luxury sector to this? How has that been faring? I mean, the very high-level statistics certainly show that it's done okay through 2008, COVID, etc. But how has it been from your perspective, Philippe, as an actual investor in businesses?
I think that what has been interesting about the luxury sector is that for the last 30 years, it has been an extremely resilient sector. But clearly, we have experienced something absolutely unique over the last 3 years, where we had this 2 years of COVID, and now I would say a crisis emerging, and it's just amazing to see how interestingly those companies are reacting. And I think maybe Marco, you could explain us how Artemest has been facing the COVID, and I would say the opposite of. I would say what would have expected. The COVID has been a fantastic platform for businesses that are digital and that have a strong digital component.
Yes, as I was saying before, we are a digital company, but we were also very lucky during that period of time because our focus is on the home. And those categories during COVID, with people spending more time at home and also basically reconsidering their life, as some changes are still longer lasting, people are still working from home today. They basically became more conscious about how important home is in our everyday life. And during those times, part of our business, the business that works with hospitality client, basically came to almost a complete halt and stop. But on the other side, the consumer business basically was extremely resilient and skyrocketed and growth way faster than we expected. So yeah, it was a great opportunity for us. We tried to size it in the best way.
And did the transformation to the digital on your side operationally play a big part in maintaining the resilience?
I think that from an operational point of view, yes, there were a few implications. One thing that we noticed, we operate a marketplace with more than 1,500 companies, from the very small artisan to the medium-sized company. And for all of them, basically, their opportunities to sell to clients were completely shut. And they were coming to us like a last resort, asking for help in selling their items. From an operation point of view, being a digital business, we were very ready to react, to continue operating with absolutely no slowdowns. In part, it was because we were ready to work from home, and all of the operation were run digitally and continued working smoothly through that time.
Cool, yeah, very interesting. And I believe now that we're on kind of the digital trend part of this, Diana, it would be great to get your perspective as well on whether there's any kind of digital levers or trends that you see maybe facilitating the change to ESG optimal.
Yes, I mean, for where we sit, we work with luxury brands across 7 verticals. So experience is one of them. kind of fashion, accessories, beauty, travel and hospitality, and so on. So what we see is in most businesses, the digital trend is quite, high up in terms of their priorities, but sustainability is basically the other side of that coin. So when you look at the two trends almost in parallel, you can see that there is a beautiful coherence in terms of what has happened in digital many, many years ago, back in the year 2000, and what's happening right now in sustainability. So if you think about the silos and the idea that digital was a silo, 20 years ago, sustainability used to be like this. It's now moving out of the silo and being integrated in every part of the business. And actually, the digital play is super important in order to, a couple of things. One is transparency. I mean, everybody, I'm sure that the transparency piece is very important for everybody. Legislation is changing, forcing that transparency across the entire business and across the value chain. And the other point is about the elephant in the room, about consumption, right? So, we are in a trend in which we have now 5 generations working in the workplace. The younger crowd is about buying less and buying better. The older guys about growth. And there's this kind of friction. So what technology is doing is actually taking some of this friction away and helping integrate the value chain to the end consumer and driving that transparency throughout and making, a lot of these processes, I wouldn't say frictionless, but starting to actually see how these two things can actually start working together. So I think it's super exciting time right now. I know it's hard and it's crisis-like, but I'm from South America, I'm from Argentina, so the only thing we know is crisis. So this is a great opportunity.
So you're well trained.
I think that's what crisis is exactly true. And it's very well to talk about trends and everything like that, but COVID for some of our companies was tough. We managed, for one of our companies, Click and Boat, in the height of COVID, when Paris and Spain were totally locked down, to convince the management to take their car, to drive to Barcelona, and to pick up our biggest competitor for 1/10 of the price that we were negotiating before COVID. So, and we also managed to sell our stake in a hotel company for 3 times cash on cash. So it's about people today. The easy money's made. And if you can take opportunities which will come through crises the whole time, you benefit enormously.
Yeah, that's very interesting because, that's exactly what you're doing as well, is helping companies seize opportunities, right? Because many see sustainability and ESG as a massive risk, and yes, it is a massive risk, but it's also a huge opportunity, right? So I guess that's a lot about what you do for companies as well, no?
Absolutely. Sustainability is like the elephant in the room. Every time that you say sustainability, people are like, no. But if you can actually break it down and make it easy, it's about sustainability is the heart of the organization. You can bake it into the strategy. ESG, second elephant in the room, is about the wallet and the minds. And then you have this regenerative leadership, which is about, kind of much more inclusive, much more dynamic, much more empathic. And actually you have minds, hearts, hands, and wallet. And what is exciting is the fact that the mindset of most leaders right now are seeing sustainability as a couple of things. One is a cost-cutting exercise. It's much easier to say, we are not going to travel because we're going to be eco-efficient or eco-conscious, instead of saying, we are not going to travel because we actually want to cut our costs by 30%. Secondly, is about more efficiency within the value chains in terms of how do you work with key suppliers, how do you invest in those key suppliers, and how you develop those key suppliers over time, versus we are going to squeeze our suppliers to the max, to the point that we can actually get what we need from them. So the mindset of sustainability is becoming an enabler to actually drive efficiencies, drive better costs. But the most important thing, you talk about people, is this talent piece, which is, for many years has been an employee market, changing jobs every 5 minutes and all the things I'm sure you guys are used to in terms of your pain points. But now it's about how you actually retain this talent, how you have the best talent and retain them. And actually, as sustainability is moving out of the silo and moving into the organization, people feel that they can actually play a role into actually solving these problems for the company and for the world. So it's becoming really exciting time for people and for talent in general. And I guess the last point, and I know you want me to not speak as much as I do, but women have more words than men.
I totally agree with that. I totally expect to do that. I've got 3 sisters, so I agree with that. But your thing about talent and employees being able to empower, Hauk, who has been with us for about a year and a half, he used to work for a sustainability company, and he's now driving that area in our business because we're too old and we don't know what to do. But there's a very good combination. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's something that now, because of course you point out that comes from the consumers, and it is absolutely a bottom-up as well as you mentioned regulation. But what we're seeing, and I think you agree with this, Philippe, is that actually the LPs and the investors are increasingly asking very difficult questions about this, absolutely as it should be. So I think that's something absolutely everyone should be on top of at this day and age. But if we just take a quick step back here and look back to the kind of because this is a very important element of tomorrow's luxury, but it's also one out of many. So Mark, you've spoken a bit about digitalization. Philippe, can you give us any kind of insights into how the sector actually has changed over the 10, 12 years that you've been investing into it? Do you see any maybe examples?
Clearly, in our portfolio today, we have about 300 million of revenues in the digital sphere. But we also have very traditional businesses such as a vineyard in Burgundy. And we have, and maybe I would say it's a little example, but this is how, a business that for 100 years have been working always in the same way. And we had to do at a very small level, in a very small company, a kind of a revolution, where basically we tried for 4 or 5 years to digitalize the business, to be omni-channel. And we've been facing, each time a wall, and we've not been able at all to convince, people to plug in into a new distribution network. One of the examples basically was to say, but how can I put up my price on the internet when my distributors in Asia, in the US, in France are going to see, prices that could be conflicting. So at the end of the day, what we did is that we set up a team in Paris that was working fully on the digital part of the business. We did all the work alone, not being a wine specialist. We came 4 months later to the team in Burgundy, and we say, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. You plug in into more. You put all the 42 wines that we have in the portfolio. You all plug them in, and we find the price that would be coherent for our distribution, making sure that there won't be any conflict with anybody. So this is a very little example. That's a little example that shows that in 3 years' time we went from 0 being done in the digital sphere, 0 being done in direct sales, and we added a wine school also in the business in Puligny-Montrachet, and we end up today to make 25% of our sales in the most traditional businesses, I would say, in the world. Wine, we've been able to do 25% of our sales that are direct sales. And that is, I would say, typically something that, we've been fighting for. Maybe it has been one of the worst challenges that we have because, when we deal with people like Marco, it's much easier to have a digital strategy. But this is clearly something that we are very proud of because we really built what we think is maybe the first little omni-channel domain in Burgundy, and we are happy that it works, and this is the part of the business where we have the best margins, and where we are clearly creating a super strong link between the customer and the product and the team. So this is one of the examples. We have plenty. I think in our portfolio we have 10 examples of 10 different. But I think that experience today is also something that is absolutely key for the customers. We have we are the majority shareholder of a group called Kever House, and we have a bio farm in Dordogne on another brand called Kever de Neuvik. And the way today the customers are going and visiting the farm and visit the factory and touch the product and see how all the I would say for this 10 years period, the animal has grown in this farm. And we have a joke basically saying that we have a spa for sturgeons. But this is, I think, the most beautiful farm that you would get today and that you will be able to visit today. So if you go to the Bordeaux region, please have a chance to go and visit it, because then you understand much better the product, the history of the product, the team, and the people that have been working for it, and you became curious. And this is part of, I think, in tomorrow's luxury, part of this educational thesis that needs to be made is that now every single customer, of course, wants transparency, but he wants to be more educated. He wants to learn more about just, I love Chardonnay. He wants to know which year, which winemaker, where the grape is coming from, do you have sulfite or not? I mean, this is all the amount of details that, is part of transparency, but it's also part of curiosity on behalf of the customers that they want to learn. And I think that the exchange that we need to have, with our customers tomorrow is that we need to feed them with more and more information because they want to hear all the stories, and they're very curious about that. And in the fine food sectors on which we have a part of our portfolio, I think that we can see that extremely strongly.
Absolutely. You touch on a lot of interesting themes here that are a big part of tomorrow's luxury. So you have the omni-channel aspect, which I'd love to ask you about soon, Marco. We have the experiential, and we have also what we've been speaking a bit about previously, the kind of narrative that a company will build. And I'd love for you to expand a bit on this because I thought you had some very interesting opinions on this.
Yeah, I mean, I just love what you said, Philippe, because people really want to connect with the stories. People really want to understand what you're buying, who are you buying it from, and what's in it for me. So sometimes, we get so much data, and also in sustainability and ESG, you get so much data, but what does it mean? What does it mean to me as a consumer? What does it mean to you as an investor? And what does it mean to you as a customer? And I mean, storytelling, it's kind of something that we have done since we are babies. That's what our moms do to us. They tell, or dads, they tell us stories. So this is very much ingrained into humanity, into human nature. And when we think about what are and why luxury has been so successful for the last 40 years in terms of resilience, and it's not, you can have one good year, 2 good years, 3 good years, 10 good years, but 35 years consecutively, you must be doing something right. And this is the idea that luxury is, this is what luxury does. Luxury tells stories. Luxury disconnects you from the reality, and luxury helps you to dream. Yet luxury, of course, has to be much more sustainable, but it's about what luxury does and what luxury how you can experience this. And we talk about experiences, you talk about experience, and this is really interesting because when you think about the LVMH group or even Kering Group and some of the big luxury houses, they are all moving towards experiential. So they are diversifying their portfolios towards a more experiential type of businesses. And this is because we are, big generalization, kind of rich, peak stuff. We don't need anything else. I don't need another pair of trainers. God forbid, I don't need another handbag. Yes, you heard that, right? Or another pair of shoes, by that matter. But I love to go and do, I don't know, a visit to the farm or have a great experience with the vineyards, but also learn, how is this made, how is the people are treated, and feel proud about those experiences. So the world is changing. Millennials are too old. They're 40 years old. They're gone. They're past. It's over.
You were not 40.
You look 40. And now Gen Zs want different things. And I think, the alphas, the generation coming in, for me, is where I put the money. Because they are to sustainability what millennials were to digital. So I feel very excited because the world is changing and you can feel it. And I think storytelling, it's a massive, massive part, and that's not going to go away. That's going to stay, whether it's Web3, whether it's 2.0, whatever it is, this is going to stay because that is who we are as people.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's ingrained in human nature as well. And it ties into what could potentially be a difficult question, but I suppose you can't bring people to, Liguria to have them look at the carpets being made because you're selling, I suppose, all over the world. Yeah. So how do you guys manage to tell that story, and how do you create a customer experience being essentially an e-commerce platform, right?
Yeah, I think the storytelling is a core component of Artemest DNA. And when we started, basically trying to promote small craftsmen that no one had ever heard about digitally, we basically faced that issue front and center the very first day. coming from fashion, where you basically promote brands that have been working in marketing for decades, and you just intercept the interest that people have built on that brand for decades, it's really very much transactional doing e-commerce for fashion. When you start promoting people who have zero history, zero recognition, zero awareness, you need to tell the story. Because what makes the product special is not the product per se, it's the story behind it. And even if it's not as rich as going to an artisan workshop, meeting them, talking to them, and seeing them making the product, we tried to select beautiful pictures that capture the essence of who they are as artisans, put them front and center. Unlike many marketplaces, we decided to put their name very visible, even if that can cannibalize our sales, because you know the name, you can go directly to them. But I think it's a way of being transparent and being a partner for them in the long run. And there's another element, though, which is the experiential luxury. We have been aspiring to that since we started with our adventure. And as a pure digital business for many years, we were seeking that connection with the client. And one of the, I think, more authentic experiences that we ever had was creating events where we were inviting artisans and we were basically putting them in the middle of the event, creating marbleized paper, and also giving that type of experience to the customers. They were able, with the guide of the artisan, to create a beautiful sheet of paper and learn the technique, and the joy in experiencing that very authentic moment was incredible. And so we did that many times over, and it's always a hit when we do it.
Yeah, great.
But the other interesting about your brand and the strength of the moat you've created is that in the last survey done, only one of your 10 customers remembered the original artisan. The rest all remembered you.
Yeah, because basically, as a marketplace, we also work as a luxury brand. We guarantee that all of the artisans that we have selected for the customer can deliver the level of quality that a luxury customer expects. And we are very hands-on in making sure that the end experience and the end-to-end experience matches that level of expectation, doing quality control, making sure that they meet the lead time that they promised. It's hard, but it's also a differentiating factor compared to all of the other marketplaces in the area. And the important thing that you were mentioning is that in the end, you are remembered as the brand and the one that guarantees for the quality of the artisan, despite the fact that the name of the artisan is always visible and they have full access to it.
Yeah, I see. It's absolutely a part of the curation and the experience that's becoming very central to what we all do. And we've now spoken a bit about kind of how to reach the new consumer. I think we should speak a bit about what defines the new consumer. What kind of values do they have? How do they shop? What do they want? Philippe, do you want to take the lead on this one?
No, I think it's more for the
Both of you can.
We have too many different customers.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think that, when you look at luxury, for example, the average age of a customer, of a luxury customer now is 15 years old. It used to be 18 and now it's 15. And the reason why is because the world has changed into linear to circular. And this is actually a fantastic opportunity for everybody to actually have access to luxury, even if you don't have a lot of money, because you can buy pre-love. And this is actually super interesting because, younger demographics are starting to experience quality and craftsmanship and beautiful stuff, and also mix and match with like vintage, which are not particularly luxury, but from other countries and so on. So, the whole experience of buying is different. Of course, fast fashion still plays a huge role. But the mindset of the younger consumers is changing. It's changing to the point that now you have thrift trips, organized thrift trips to the US to actually buy from thrift shops, second-hand shops, because that's the new cool. Was cool when I was growing up, but now it's the new cool. And also, I think the mindset of consumers is changing, because although, you know, when you see in Instagram, everybody changing their clothes every 5 seconds and so on, people are starting to reject that and wanting to find slightly different. Obviously, this is a massive generalization because you have different levels of maturity from a sustainability perspective in different markets. But people want experiential, people want, you know, pre-love, they want to experience quality much more earlier on. And more importantly, I think what's also changing is this kind of inside out. So luxury brands are becoming a lot more muted, less logo in your face, a lot more subdued in terms of the kind of the way they behave. And we are seeing a much more, I wouldn't say austere type of luxury, but less in-your-face luxury. And this is something that we are seeing in many, many different countries. And I think above all is, you know, what we're seeing is across generation is like we actually all watch the same Netflix shows. We all, I mean, ultimately, we do the same thing, regardless whether you are 15 or you are 60. We're doing the same type of stuff, and we're doing the same type of stuff across the world if we're allowed. So the unification of taste is becoming a reality, and what is different is the experience of how do you access that. Whether you are at home with your friends watching Ted Lasso, or where you are, I don't know, on your own doing it. So it's changing how do you choose to have that experience, more than the experience itself, if it makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what you're saying is that essentially building a brand narrative, at least to follow on from what you're saying, is now increasingly difficult because you need to hit all of these younger consumers, and they all have a specific ideas of what their own narrative is and how they want to actually be approached. So how do you then build a brand that actually hits all of this?
Exactly, and there's a guy who talks about brand me. So almost like now is starting to get inverted. It's like, how do you allow the brand needs to ask permission for you to wear it or use it or show it. So it's very interesting what's coming, especially with Web3 coming in. This is not quite sustainability, but you know, this will enable people to have, to buy less products and have a whole different type of world on Web3. So I think I mean, I'm probably the only one here, but I'm really excited about the future because I think that we have gone through it back in the year 2000, and only good stuff happened. When you have a crisis, you have the opportunity to reinvent the world, and this is why I'm excited about what's coming. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, there's opportunity out there.
It's very true. And
I think also we haven't really talked about the elephant in the room, and I'm not a champagne socialist, or as they call them in South America, a caviar socialist, but all our clients, and that's why it's so resilient, are in the top 1%. And the top 1% over the last 20 years with easy money have still got a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, what I would add is that the access to these clients have been very specific in some cases. So for example, when we start the boat business, I mean, most of the customers were customers that were paying 500 euros per day for half a day or a day cruise on the Zodiac, you know. And ultimately, we started to offer more services, and now it ends up to have basically an access to customers that would pay 100 or 200,000 euros for a week holidays in Sicilia. So this is really something that has completely changed. That entering the little door, ultimately you end up to have your 1% customers that you know we all like. Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry. I'd like to ask you a question because I think this is like the second generation that has more wealth in the world. Like, you know, basically the boomers have made their money, and now, you know, the Gen the Gen Xs and the Gen Zs are coming, and millennials are coming to money in a way that we have never seen history. I mean, you can talk about this more than I can.
No, but exactly. But I think this is, typically in our portfolio there would be two examples. Really, this platform, boats.com, who's the leading platform in Europe and in the US for renting and selling a boat on the internet, and Le Collectionniste, which is a high-end Airbnb. And it's really, I think, amazing how, basically you grow with your customers, and you end up to, as I said, have a very little ticket with an offer to your customers that is able to pay for a little boat or a little space, and you end up, for example, for Le Collectionniste, to have an average rent of 27,000 euros per week, and we do a pretty substantial volume on this one, and more or less for the two companies, the same volume, about 120, 140 million euros per year. So you're doing a lot of volume, and generating this volume, you increase your spectrum and the access to the different type of customer that you would have. So on our portfolio, it's very difficult because I would say the customers that we're dealing with are very different if we're speaking about the vineyard or the collectionist, and they're or Artemest are very different type of customers. But what is clear is that I think that the spectrum of potential clients you're dealing with have never been that large. And maybe I think it fits with what you're saying, because it's that is also absolutely new. The customers have been on average richer than in the past, but also the people you're speaking to are global, and you try to adapt to each of their needs.
Yeah, and this certainly is a big part of the resilience that I think Jeremy and others have alluded to. And actually, a quick anecdote, I was at a family office conference yesterday, and the opening opening speech of the whole session was a man speaking about how to survive Armageddon, in full seriousness, about how he's built himself a house with a basement, he's got weapons, he's got food, everything you need to survive a nuclear holocaust, essentially. And this is what set the tone, which I thought was quite an odd way to begin a conference. But then, obviously, as you guys said, the younger generations come in, and people that are managing money at the age of, say, 30, and they all speak about climate, they speak about VCs, they speak about impact, and they speak about new opportunities and how you can actually seize all these issues as opposed to just hide in your shelter, essentially. So I think that kind of frames what you guys are saying now as well. And I know also that you guys are doing a VC fund quite imminently. I guess this could be slightly relevant as well to this idea of seizing new opportunities and trying to build something for the future as well. Do you guys want to speak briefly about this?
Well, so there's the problem, which is what you talked about, which is the ESG issues. For the 60-odd of the young clients want to know where it's made and it's not polluting and it's important. You've got the clients, which are all of the big luxury houses like LVMH and Kering, who've been unable to use Web 2 because it was too generic and not personalized enough. And the move to Web 3 and computer-assisted design and your thing done like that, and yeah, we'll be investing much more in those.
I think if I can build on that, there is also a fantastic opportunity to build on solutions. And sorry, I always talk about climate solutions, but also people solutions. I think, when you think about and read the newspaper and climate change is going to kill us all, possibly, but also, the reality is that we are, as humans, very innovative, very resilient, and I really do believe I have faith in the human race that we will come up with a solution. So I really think that there is a huge growth opportunity for any funds to raise a fund, to look for those innovative solutions, whether it's materials, whether it's carbon capture, whether it's water. I mean, all of the problems that we have are solvable, and it just needs capital and access to capital. Innovation happened at a very small scale. That's where innovation lives, and only when it sees air and the light of the day is scalable. And for that, we need money.
And 10% of global emissions come from these clothing companies.
Correct.
And the richest companies in the world are LVMH and Kering, who are all going to spend money on it. So the capital will be there. And when they do it, other people will flow. I totally agree.
That's right. And Marco, let's go back to you for a second, because we've just spoken about innovation. And I think it's fair to say that you're in a sector which is not known for innovation. I mean, furniture is not traditionally where you go to see something completely new. But you guys are doing something quite new, right? Do you want to speak a bit about how you guys have been able to innovate?
Yeah, we've been basically building through digital tools what we believe was the only way of reaching that cohort of luxury clients all over the world. Coming from fashion, and the difference was very striking moving to design and furniture, because the system is very much underdeveloped. In terms of distribution, fashion is probably 10, 15 years ahead of what is happening with the design and furniture industries. One side is also rooted in very concrete elements, like the impact of shipping costs. It's very contained in fashion, and that allowed all the marketplace and online stores to create this escamotage where you can buy a product, try it on at home, and then return it. With furniture, you cannot do it. Shipping costs are so high, and it's not very practical to send back a sofa once you have purchased it. So I think the innovation there also happened very much slowly because of these inherent reasons. But on the other side, with creativity, we were able to build a platform that basically was putting front and center people who were completely unknown and made them look credible because of the history, because of the story of their products, the quality of their products, and the beauty of the products. And building on that, we are trying to innovate on all of the touch points, creating new touch points with the clients that are not only digital. We started as a pure digital player, but as we know, the appetite of luxury customers for experience, we have always trying to embed that element into everything that we do, creating events, opening a galleria in New York, so a physical space where we can bring the most beautiful items in front of the eyes of our customers, and participating in important events like Milan Design Week every year, and creating exhibitions that actually connect the customer with the product. But digital for us is mostly a tool. What really matters is the brand values that we have always brought forward, and the storytelling that we can bring to the table. Because in the end, a luxury customer cares about the values of the product and the brand that they're buying. And this is even more true now with younger clients, as we were saying before. So I think it's going to be intensifying the competition, especially in digital, and everyone will try to use those tools, the new innovation, to leverage on those new value sets of the clients and create new ways of connecting and telling the stories that matter to the clients.
Absolutely, and I'm glad because you managed to bring in just about everything we've been speaking about, and it really all comes from innovation, right? So you're completely right there.